This is David Bateson, the voice of Agent 47, and you're listening to the Xbox Expansion Pass.
Welcome one, welcome all to episode 97 of the Xbox Expansion Pass, recorded on Sunday, August 29th, 2021. I am your host, Luke Lohr of the InsipidGhost. In this episode, we'll be recapping the latest Xbox news to come out of Gamescom and Opening Night Live, including the much talked about Halo Infinite release date. After that, we'll welcome members of Ronimo Games on to discuss their latest release, Blightbound. Enjoy. Yet another week of gaming is upon us and behind us. Welcome to XEP, discussing all things in the Gamerverse as they pertain to the Xbox ecosystem. And as I am wont to do each and every week, I like to start the show by offering words of kindness to those who have made my gaming week better. And this week there is a bevy of names to whom I am giving thanks to: Golden Gamer Graham, Hassan Abu Zaid, Dr. Mo Kwama, goodness gracious, Mr. Leonidas, and HR Bomber. Jordan, you're in there somewhere as well. These guys are part of the seasoned gaming community, and they have been livening up my day with a group chat that has just been full of laughs, good gaming takes, and plenty more thoughts to go around. I have thoroughly enjoyed my time with these guys, and in a very stressful opening week of school, I haven't participated much in the chats, but I've been looking at them, and they've helped me stay up to date on a lot of the gaming news, some of which I'll be talking about here. So, gentlemen, shout out to you guys. I much appreciate you. I know you're members of the seasoned gaming community, and that's how we came to meet, but I am very glad that we are part of the same community now, so cheers to you guys. Let's get to some news, guys. Well, Gamescom and Opening Night Live both brought with them plenty of Xbox relevant news. There's a lot of things to break down, including the Halo Infinite release date, and a lot of takes to be had here, of course. Now, interestingly, the Xbox Gamescom showcase took place before Opening Night Live, much to its own disservice. In fact, we have a question from Court Lalonde about that exact thing. But if you're unfamiliar with what I'm talking about, the Xbox Gamescom stream was very similar to the E3 Extended Showcase hosted by Paris Lilly, in that this showcase that Xbox recently had was also hosted by Paris Lilly and followed a very similar format. And it wasn't well received this time, whereas it was last time. But in large part, I don't think that's because they did a bad job with it. In fact, I think it had more to do with the timing and perhaps the pacing. Paris Lilly again did a very good job in balancing excitement for different trailers that he was showing, games he was discussing, and also developers that he was interviewing. I thought that was very well done. That said, some of the pacing felt rather off because many people were tuning into this as their first Gamescom experience, when much of that excitement and the bigger announcements were actually included in Opening Night Live, which, despite its name, took place after the Gamescom stream. And Court Lalonde did ask, and as did several people, would this Xbox showcase have benefited from having their announcements take place on a different time, saying last week before the showcase or maybe after Opening Night Live. And to Court's question, and more the spirit of his question, if this showcase that Xbox put together had been dropped after Opening Night Live and some of the announcements that came with that, I think people would have been much higher on it. Xbox has had a lot of PR wins in the last 2 years, but cracks in the armor are beginning to show, and this most recent showcase had a lot of pacing issues that people simply were not ready for. The show was slowed down by deep dives into games like Wasteland, which, while very impressive and included on Game Pass, etc., are very niche titles, and I'm not sure that was best served in the first showcase of Gamescom for Xbox, when indeed it would have been really cool to have, a showcase extended after Opening Night Live, which included plenty of big announcements. In fact, contrary to the order in which the Gamescom stream and then Opening Night Live took place, I'm going to flip it and discuss Opening Night Live because I believe that's where some of the bigger news for Xbox took place, and I think that's where a lot of the hype was for the Xbox community. And if I am incorrect in that, please, of course, reach out. Let me know your thoughts. Maybe I'm in error on that one, but for my money, I thought Opening Night Live was far more interesting despite it being multi-platform focused. And I say that because in Opening Night Live, we got the Halo Infinite release date confirmed after what looked like some leaks were pretty relevant. Leaks, of course, by Microsoft's own stores in certain regions, but the Halo Infinite release date is officially December 8th, 2021. That is December 8th, 2021. So it will miss the anniversary mark of the 20-year anniversary. However, Microsoft has some cool stuff for the anniversary there coming out, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And it also misses that sweet November release timing that would allow for Black Friday. Now, I will tell you, this date is kind of cool. I kind of like it. I've had to stew on this for a bit and contemplate where I felt about it. But after several days of thinking over it, I like this release date for a couple reasons. First, it allows some of the bigger titles, RIP Dying Light 2, sorry guys, some of the bigger titles of this fall to get out there, let people have their experiences with it. And then just prior to the holiday season, we're able to have this big Halo Infinite drop, including a multiplayer that's free to play. A lot of kids will get off school. They'll be able to jump into this kind of hype train, and that's a key element to Halo's future, is kind of grabbing that younger demographic that Call of Duty, Fortnite, and dare I say Destiny have been snagging into. I like this release date because not only does it kind of give time for those games to already come out, it also gives as much time as possible for those developers to continue that polish. We know that this game is coming in hot despite the year release date, and my eyebrows certainly do raise. I was not concerned when they delayed it a year. I was actually very pleased. I wasn't even terribly concerned when I saw that they were going to be excluding campaign co-op from the game at launch, because I saw the roadmap. It's a live service model. They're still going to be delivering a multiplayer experience that many people were very high on after the technical preview, and we know we're going to get a single player campaign, and they're trying to focus on Chief here. We also know that in setting up this platform, we will get more stories of a sort to come out down the line. So while it is a big blow for Halo that they don't have campaign co-op, I wasn't necessarily concerned. The December release date does make me raise eyebrows, though, and it is kind of a third red flag for me in that, man, this game must be coming in hot. Joseph Staten certainly reworked a lot of things with the Infinite game. We know that they've really worked to improve a lot of things, and there's going to be a lot of features missing that are coming to this live service platform that we might have expected in a Halo release some years ago in the Xbox One and 360 generations. The game's coming in hot, and I think there is plenty of room for caution with Halo Infinite. If you are skeptical as to whether or not they'll be delivering a top-tier product, that is certainly understandable. I am with you on that, not because it's 343. I think a lot of those people that are going after 343 are being childish and inflammatory. 343 has proven time and again that they are very talented and good at what they do. It was a matter of focus. But for a December release date's late to land in there, and you know that they have promised 2021, particularly when the game's already been delayed for a year and is missing features. That said, much of this judgment should be reserved a bit before the game comes out, and we should be playing more betas, see some more campaign closer to launch when the time comes, and then judge it for ourselves. And this is the same courtesy that we should be extending to any AAA game that has gone through development issues. And you should think about, for comfort's sake, Red Dead Redemption 2, The Last of Us 2, so I'm thinking here, God of War, Ghost of Tsushima, Arkham Knight, all these big AAA games that are really well regarded, that have lots of modes and features, and then get expanded upon after launch. There's a lot to be added there, and we can take comfort in that. Still, no reason not to be raising eyebrows at this. It is a bit odd. That said, I do like this release date. I comfortably can say I like this release date of December 8th. Prior to holiday, a lot of benefits to that release date, but certainly understandable if anyone is cautious there. Now, in this Opening Night Live presentation, Joseph Staten went out there. He explained a couple things kind of in that realm, but really he took the focus to the Halo 20th anniversary, the launch of the first Halo, and how Microsoft and Xbox would be celebrating it. And they're doing it with 2 limited edition pieces of hardware. The first being a Series X limited edition console that is absolutely gorgeous. $550, includes a copy of Halo Infinite. I saw that being misreported in a few places. You do get a digital copy of Halo Infinite. This thing is gorgeous, customized to sweet different Halo Infinite features. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. I loved it. I could not justify to myself, to my family, or to anybody else to try and seek one out for $550 when I just got a Series X last year. It would be great as a luxury, but there's so few Series X's out there that I guess on the moral high ground of me was saying, hey, save your money, let other people find this one. And let those consoles go out there, and they are very, very limited. I will say to all of you who are listening, if you are able to avoid scalpers, do so. Do not let scalpers take advantage of you. You can still play plenty of games without the decals on there. I know it's a collector's item, and I understand that, but don't let anyone take advantage of your money on that. Now, the piece of hardware that I did purchase and was able to get a pre-order on, and I do feel fine about, is a Halo Infinite controller that is an Elite Series 2. Now, these are $200. They're expensive little bad boys there. Elite Series 2 controllers, which I know many people have had concerns and issues with, but to date, after, since 2018, I've had my Elite 2. Maybe 2019. I don't remember exactly. But whenever the Elite 2 came out, I got one, and it has not broken on me yet, knock on wood, and it has been wonderful. Well, this Halo Infinite version is just absolutely gorgeous. That customizable round D-pad is that perfect Spartan gold. There's a Spartan green in there. Some really cool features on there that just it spoke to me, and I was fortunate enough to purchase one, or pre-order one, I should say. I texted my wife and I said, babe, you have purchased me a birthday present. Thank you so much. It's just what I wanted. And she responded back, I have good taste. And I said, man, that's why I married this woman. She is amazing. I think both these pieces of hardware are wonderful. They do a lot to help celebrate Halo. I've got a lot of different pieces of Halo memorabilia ordered. I've been working overtime, I guess you would say, to make sure I can continue to celebrate Halo in the way that I want. But so it goes. I think these are 2 good-looking pieces of customizable stuff. Microsoft has revealed several kind of special edition controllers of late, including some about Forza Horizon 5 that got shown during their Gamescom stream, which looks great. And these go beyond the standard Design Lab style controllers. I was really impressed with that Elite 2 controller. The Series X, I would want it for posterity's sake, but I didn't think it looked like God tier level design the way the Elite 2 did. But man, oh man, Halo fans rejoice. There's a lot to be happy about this year. The game that we want has been given a lot more time to be developed. Here's hoping it launches well and people enjoy it. I genuinely, without exaggeration, want Halo to be back in a way that it deserves to be back. There's a lot of ways to enjoy Halo: single player, multiplayer co-op, competitive play, PvE play. There's a lot of stuff going on there, and there's a lot of asks being given about Halo Infinite, but my best goes out to that team, and quite separately, my best goes out to those involved in designing promotional materials, because all things considered, they've done a great job there. Matt from Assemble wrote in kind of on this topic, and he said, with the release of the Halo controller and the Aqua Blue and the Forza Horizon, do you think we see a trend continue? And what controllers do you want to see next? Matt, I absolutely think we will continue to see a trend of special edition controllers, particularly given that consoles are in such short supply. Of course, they had to celebrate Halo, but consoles will likely not get true special editions for a little while. Pandemic, chip shortages, any other material shortages, whatever reasoning you want to point to, it's harder to get a console special edition versus a controller. And I think you'll continue to see controllers that celebrate certain franchises. They seem to sell well. They seem to be very popular. They're very easy for people to take pictures of and share and generate hype for a game or franchise. I know I have a few controllers. I have the Gears 5 controller. I have the Xbox Duke controller that Hyperkin put out. I have my Day 1 Series X controller that's never been used. My Elite 2. I I understand why people collect and show them off, and I subscribe to that. I will no longer be buying regular controllers. I will say that. I have the two copies, two Aqua Blues, or not two Aqua Blues, two of the Sonic the Hedgehog looking blue ones that came out kind of at the launch. I've been using one. The other one's still in its box. I don't know. Maybe I should do a giveaway for something with it or something like that. But either way, that's just sitting there, and I'll be buying special edition ones from here on out as they pertain, like as they're relevant to me. A Gotham Knights one might be the way I go there, but yeah, I think we'll see this happen for a long time because they're good money makers for sure. But good question. They need to do another Sea of Thieves one. I'll say that. Celebrate those franchises, guys. Celebrate them. Opening Night Live included several other announcements, more coverage, of course, on Age of Empires 4, which is still Age of Empires, despite its really impressive showing there. Cheers to anybody that's rocking that. Far Cry 6 was, of course, on display. More coverage of Call of Duty Vanguard. Despite the ongoing allegations with Activision, they are plowing through. I did notice that on several of the marketing materials, they removed the logo of Activision Presents and shifted it to Call of Duty Presents. That looks like a damage control thing, given the hostilities that many people were encountering in the workplace at Activision Blizzard and a few other places around Activision. Those ongoing lawsuits and litigation are still there. But Vanguard seems to be getting rather tepid response thus far, and perhaps it's just my timeline, which of course is isolated to people I follow. But most people I'm seeing are not overly thrilled by Vanguard. It doesn't seem to be all that exciting. I wonder if the launch of Cold War in the state that it didn't do some damage to the Call of Duty brand in a way that we weren't ready for. And then, of course, in social media, the general vibe is pretty negative towards Activision. You have to wonder, though, if that really translates to mass sales or if that's just kind of our niche platform in an echo chamber. I don't really know. We won't really know. But in large part, people don't seem to be as thrilled for Vanguard as I would have expected for a Call of Duty, and it could just be the changing times. Let's see here. The Saints Row reboot was officially announced. We'd seen teases several times before, but Opening Night Live included a trailer for the official reboot. A lot of people excited about this. A lot of people pretending they were best friends with the original Saints Row games, and they absolutely loved it back then. I don't know that was initially true. I've seen Saints Row be really serious all the way through to the ludicrousness of Saints Row 4. 3 was, of course, I feel the peak, and I think many other people do. But I'm glad Saints Row is back. I enjoy the competition in the open world space, and here's hoping it lands and lands well, because they have a pretty darn good chance at hitting well. So hopefully that is something that more people are excited for. I'm curious to know when it actually takes place. There, of course, there is a release date for Saints Row. It's in 2022. I want to say February. Has become very crowded. February 2022 has got a lot of games releasing there, but, what is a reboot? We'll see what the reboot really brings forth. I have questions, and not any condemnations, just questions. Let's see what else is on the docket. Of course, we've got Marvel's Midnight Suns. This one surprised me, and it also had a super dope rendition of Enter Sandman from Metallica that was kind of going along with it. But this is a Marvel game by the developers of XCOM that is going to be a tactical RPG. The artwork looked incredible. They combined several Marvel heroes that you haven't had a chance to see intermix except in video games of late. We're talking about like Wolverine, Iron Man, Blade, and Ghost Rider kind of all being together. Honest to goodness, there is a woman that is in the center of this group. It looks like she's holding two swords, but I do not know which character it is. This game is set to come out in March of 2022, and I was really impressed with the cinematics. Very excited for it. The cinematics and the sound and the visuals were awesome. We saw no gameplay at the time of this recording, although it is expected soon. I was excited because I love superhero games, right? Like, I'm still playing Avengers. I'm looking forward to Gotham Knights like crazy. I'll probably, hate myself and try the Guardians of the Galaxy game. I don't know. Square Enix has not earned a lot of goodwill from me with their handling of several things, including Avengers. But I like superheroes, right? So Marvel Midnight Suns is absolutely on my radar. Though, to be fair, tactical RPGs in those sense are not really my jam. I prefer kind of Halo Wars style games, which are eluding me at live strategy games, real-time strategy games. There we go. But we'll see how Marvel Midnight Suns go. I can tell you what, the visuals look awesome. That's for sure. Far Cry 6 got some more showcases. Horizon Forbidden West got a release date, which is really cool. You got to say Horizon Forbidden West being released kind of next year is good. We talked about this. We already knew the release date, I should say, but this is exciting for me because it gives them time to finish a great game. It also makes way for the end of the year. Third-party titles and Halo Infinite kind of have their time in the sun, and it makes for a stacked 2022. But that got some more showcases there. One other kind of thing I thought was interesting was the reception to, or rather the seeing of Crossfire X, not the reception, the seeing of Crossfire X. This game is still set to be coming out in 2021. They are sticking to it. There's no release date. We haven't seen what Remedy's doing with that single player. You have to wonder what's going on with the multiplayer of that game, how that will stand next to Call of Duty, next to Battlefield 2042, next to Halo Infinite. Oh man, God bless Crossfire X. If that had come out this summer, we'd all be playing it, I think, but that window might be gone. Last thing that I was really cool on. The Ninja Turtle game, Shredder's Revenge, coming to Xbox. Very excited about that. Was not initially going to be coming to Xbox. It was a Switch thing, but here we go. All right, no pause in this. I'm still rolling here. The extended showcase that Paris Lily hosted that was before Opening Night Live, but would have been really cool if it had been after, I think, had a lot of cool stuff happening in it. There was a lot of good kind of reveal there. We saw more of Dying Light 2, which, poor Dying Light 2, December 7th, the day before Halo Infinite. I hate that because it's like Dying Light's return to glory, and I know that PR team is working really hard there. I hate that for them. That said, cool to see some more showcases there. That game seems to be shaping. That's the word I wanted. Shaping up rather well. I like that. Dying Light is one of those beloved. I would argue it's a cult classic, despite its kind of revitalization. Not as many people dove in on Dying Light as perhaps could have, including me. Although I do own the Platinum Edition, I've played a bit of it. It's really good. It's a really good game. And Dying Light 2 looks dope. So that's cool. I'm sold on that one. I just don't know that I'm sold to play Dying Light 2 when Halo Infinite's out. You know what I mean? Sorry for that, guys. Forza Horizon 5 got more gameplay and a new controller, which we talked about. That was cool. State of Decay 2. Now, State of Decay 2, I don't know how many people are still playing it. I know that they just hit a lifetime goal, or a lifetime player count of 10 million. Dope. State of Decay 2, one of my favorite zombie games of all time, if not my favorite zombie game of all time. I love State of Decay 2. They're getting a new expansion, and a big one. It's a whole new mode, a whole new thing. It's coming out on September 1st, so by the time this episode is out, it'll probably be there. Man, State of Decay 2, props to that team for the work they're doing. We know they're working on State of Decay 3. They're still providing content to their players in State of Decay 2. They're testing out stuff in 2 that are going to go into 3. I'm in on this. If you have not played State of Decay 2 with friends, that's the way to do it. I love it single player. That was my favorite way to play it. But with friends, you are in The Walking Dead, the cool version of Walking Dead, not when it went on for too far and too long, but in the cool modes of Walking Dead, and I loved it. So you should absolutely give that game a look. If you have not already. I will be checking out this new mode sometime this fall. It comes out on September 1st. I know I'm swamped with school stuff, but at some point I'll be getting to it. We also saw that Flight Sim's getting competitive multiplayer of a sort, which is really cool. Cheers to Humble Games, who is now kind of partnering with Xbox and releasing games into Game Pass, which is really neat. There was an educational video that was just kind of dropped in there about a gaming like education stuff that was just so awfully paced. I don't even want to talk about it, but cool educational stuff Xbox is trying to get happen, but nobody cared because it was in the middle of a Gamescom stream, and that was weird and odd and didn't need to be there. But the big news, the big thing that everybody needs to take note of is the fact that cloud gaming, xCloud, is now coming to Xbox One, meaning that you can play games that are future slated for Xbox Series S and X Gen 9. You'll be able to play those games via the cloud on Gen 8 systems. This is absolutely huge. I have a good friend of mine, Matt. I don't know if you're listening, but cheers to you. Matt really wanted to play Microsoft Flight Simulator. He has an Xbox One, not a Series X or S. Matt will be able to do that now. He'll be able to play Flight Simulator without spending $400 to get a Series S plus Game Pass or whatever, without spending $500 plus Game Pass or the game. to play Microsoft Flight Simulator. He can just get Game Pass on his one, and he's good to roll. I'm sure there'll be some fidelity issues here and there, but xCloud has come such a long way. A few weeks ago, I talked about being in an airport and playing Halo 5 in an airport. That's awesome. That is absolutely awesome. I'm so thrilled for the idea that cloud gaming is becoming a thing and providing options. This is absolutely the way of the future. I want to know how this works out. If you later on this November, December, whenever this lands, are playing on your Xbox One with xCloud, I want to know about it. I want to know about load times. I want to know about fidelity. I want to know how easy it is to get it rolling in there. I'm so interested in this. This is absolutely the wave of the future because we are not far away for where on my mobile device, I'm in and out of Xbox without a big deal at all. Those streaming sticks, they're going to happen. It's going to be so cool. This is big, big news. Now, Todd Oxter wrote in and he said, with Xbox streaming to consoles, it seems like we'll be getting a lot of Xbox streaming announcements this year at CES for TVs and other devices. Do you think we'll be getting Xbox streaming tier that is just for streaming customers to grow the service and hit their growth targets? That's an interesting question. I would imagine that for the short term, Todd, they're going to confine this to Game Pass Ultimate and continue to let Ultimate be their thing, right? Ultimate's their moneymaker, the way it needs to happen. But in future, perhaps not this year, but next, you will absolutely see bundles of, buy this TV and get Game Pass for a year. And you'll have embedded Game Pass or Xbox apps on TVs with higher perpetuity than you currently do now. I had to find that word in my brain. The tiers that you are talking about are coming in the future years. I just don't think we're there yet. Right now, it's a matter of adoption. We don't know. We would guesstimate that there's 30 million Game Pass users based on the most recent numbers and the accelerated trends at which people were adopting it. But that's unproven. At last official count, there was 24 million, and that was many months ago. So the more they can kind of reach out and get up to that coveted 50 million mark, they're going to do it. They're going to find ways to do it. But the tier system might confuse customers. We'll see. We've seen them make blunders before. For God's sakes, they tried to raise the price of Xbox Live Gold. So silly. But I mean, we've also know that within Xbox, there were plenty of people who were in dissent for that and figured it out. So, good question though, Todd. Good question. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I'm looking through my notes here for the Gamescom stream that Mr. Lilly hosted. Midnight Fight Express looked really cool. I am interested in that multiplayer mode of Flight Sim. Again, that's not a game for me, but I'm interested in well enough of it. That's it. Those are kind of the two big things of the week. A lot to cover in that, which is kind of cool, right? To get a good old heavy news week and it all be pretty darn decent, all things considered. That said, again, pacing and the reception of that showcase was frustrating, but I think it was a good showcase in hindsight after the fact if you didn't watch it live. Before we get to reader mail, we have a couple good questions that we've not gotten to just yet. I do want to note that I've been playing two games a lot of late. Hades, which went into Game Pass a few weeks ago. I am still stuck on that game. I freaking love it. Love it, love it. I can't beat the third boss area where there's two bosses at once. I'm still struggling with that one, but I love this game. I understand why there was so much hype. This would be, if it was available or able to be included, this would be on my Game of the Year list, which at present includes Death's Door, it includes Hitman 3, and I think that's it. Is that it for like the big titles for this year? Not a lot happening. We're kind of looking toward the back half of the year for Xbox games to be kind of available for Game of the Year. Who knows, right? I did see I saw when Psychonauts 2 released, which by the way, Psychonauts 2 getting great reviews, multi-platform game, now owned by Xbox developers, yada yada. Really great reviews. People are very excited about Psychonauts. I saw people before Psychonauts was out and before they did not play it. These weren't like reviewers. They were saying Psychonauts 2 was their game of the year. And I see people saying that Halo Infinite's their game of the year. They've never played it. I don't understand that. I understand the excitement for it. I understand saying, oh, I hope it's my game. I'm so excited. This is going to be awesome. But, you've never played it. How are you rating it on Metacritic under user reviews or anything else? It just, that kind of stuff, man. I can't get behind it. It's so dumb. I'm calling out Gaz from Game On Daily for this one. He was Gaz, you're soft shtick. I don't like it. Fight me. So the PS5 got like an update or something where now it runs 5 degrees hotter. Man, if the Xbox Series X got an update and it ran 5 degrees hotter, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't care. Who cares? Like, it's not melting. It's not overheating. This isn't anywhere a concern at the moment, right? Like, these are not issues that these consoles have. And I saw people just flipping out to be angry about stuff. And I don't understand looking for things to be angry about. It's clout chasing and it's silly. And I'm well aware. I've actually had this conversation. These were private questions asked privately, so I won't share who asked them, but I got several DMs from people asking why I don't jump into those discussions more because it will raise my viewer and listener count. Man, I don't care about those things. Like, I want more people to hear XEP. We're on episode 97. I want people to check this show out and love it and enjoy it, but I also don't want people arguing in my timeline over 5 degrees of a PlayStation or Xbox thing. I don't want people arguing in my timeline about which version of a game has better frames. Like, I don't care. I want to have fun and play stuff. And it's just, I know I'd have more, what you might say, engagement if I said inflammatory things, but I just don't care. It's not what I want to do. I want to have fun. Like, one of the games I want to talk about, apart from Hades, Aliens Fireteam. I'm playing Aliens Fireteam Elite. We were provided review codes, to be clear, but I'm playing that with Mr. Badbit, my buddy Kev, and this is one of the most fun games I've played this year. It's janky. It's got tons of problems. It's pure AA goodness. I'm having so much fun. Man, if I cared about the frame rate and worried about dropping a frame here and there, I would be so miserable worried about that instead of just living the dream playing through aliens, shooting aliens, having a cool time in that world. And that's just what I do with it, man. Like, real talk. That's what I love about video games is I just go into these worlds. And if it helps me enjoy a game like Aliens Fireteam, which is really fun, then I'm going to do that. And, I talk a lot about Avengers. Man, I know that game's got so many problems, but I get to fly around as Iron Man. I'm frickin' T'Challa jumping around Wakanda and doing all these dope moves. That's what I'm having fun with, right? I'm ready to shoot some zombies and Back for Blood. I'm ready to drive a car on a volcano in Forza Horizon 5. And I'll be darned if I care about what frames per second I'm at if the game runs well. Like, who cares? I don't care if it drops a frame here and there. I don't care if the system runs a little warmer or cooler. I just want to have fun with this stuff, you know? Like, that's where I'm at. Again, 97 episodes in, I hope that's obvious at this point. That's where I'm at. Nobody should be in my timeline bashing PlayStation. That's not how I roll. I'm not interested in that. PlayStation's dope. It's got tons of cool stuff. I wish we had a God of War or a Spider-Man, right? Hopefully they're on their way, but like, I love Gears and Halo and Forza. You know, I'm really looking forward to a lot of what Xbox is bringing. It's an Xbox show for a reason. I love Xbox, but not at the expense of other things, and I hope you guys share that. All right. That's enough waxing poetic about that. Famous Seamus says, with fall coming up, what are some games you are looking forward to? Man, oh man, where to start? Halo Infinite, of course, is top of that list. I'm very interested in Crossfire X more because I just want to know. I just want to know where Crossfire X is landing. I did mention War for Wakanda and Hades and Aliens Fireteam. Those just came out, but those are games that I was just really excited about and I'm in on. Morbid Curiosity for Guardians of the Galaxy and Battlefield. I really am curious about those games. I would not say I'm excited for either at this point. I was really stoked for Battlefield, and then I kind of saw what I saw, people leaking out footage from that closed alpha, which is a shame. But that closed alpha really didn't look good. Didn't look good. It's not released footage though. Once that kind of goes public, I'm sure people will talk about it. But I was not in that alpha and I didn't play it, so maybe I'm wrong on that one for sure. What else am I looking forward to? I think that's kind of it. The Anacrusis I'm interested in. Riftbreaker is another one I'm interested in. Granted, I've talked to the developers for both of those games. They've been on the show before, but yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking forward to there. Next question. Last question. Let's do one more. I'm going to wrap up here. Dano wants to know, have you ever been shocked by someone saying they've never played a certain game or franchise? Which game was it? Dano, I've been thinking about this. My buddy Kevin, one of my best friends, he's not into the Arkham games at all. Hasn't finished them. Same with Mr. Badbit. And these are kind of two of my closest gaming buddies. And they're not really into the Arkham games. And that confuses me. Because they both like comics. They both like third-person action. And those games are all of that. As a diehard Batman fan, it surprises me. that anybody wouldn't want to play Arkham, but like so it goes. Yeah, that's I'm surprised they're not into those games. When people tell me they've not played God of War, but they have a PlayStation, that's really surprising to me. God of War is the best game ever made. Beyond that, I don't think there's a lot of. I don't think there's a lot of. Yeah, there's not a lot. There's not a lot past that. I don't think I think about those kind of stuff or those kind of things. Alrighty, guys. I think that's going to do it for this episode with me. But of course, we have the interview with Ronimo Games and the Blightbound developers. Blightbound came out earlier this August, I believe. Maybe late July, but early August. It's available now. You guys can listen to the developers talk about what they did wrong in that game, things they're really proud of in that game. I want to give a shout out to all of you who have listened to the most recent interviews. The Mayhem Brawler developers were ecstatic that so many of you reached out to them. That was really cool for me as a content creator to know that 6 and 7 people to me, we're reaching out to them because of the interview here. That makes me feel good, for sure. So thank you guys to those of you that reached out to Heroic Concept for the Mayhem Brawler interview. That game is really fun for sure. I have several interviews coming up, including one that's secret, and then one that's not secret with Kritzia Bayos. Kritzia is just incredible. She's a voice actor in so many games that when you look up her IMDb, it's nuts. We also know about several games she's working on that are coming out, including Gotham Knights. I have that interview recorded. That'll be on September 13th. And then next week, you are with Apogee Entertainment, and they've kind of rebirthed as well. If you didn't check out last week's episode with Player One Podcast, that is a great one. I hope you guys enjoy that one. I'm sitting on 69 iTunes reviews. Would love to get to 75 before episode 100. We're at episode 97 now. And I think I'm supposed to tell you to smash the bell or whatever on YouTube. Nah, it's whatever. Appreciate you guys all listening. Enjoy this Blightbound interview. Much love. Take care, everybody. Alrighty, guys, I am very fortunate now to welcome Neil and Lawrence from Ronimo Games here to talk about their latest release, Blightbound. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Glad to be on.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled to have you guys. I was just booting up Blightbound this morning, checking out quite a bit of that dungeon crawler, I suppose, and is a good old time there. But before we get to Blightbound, I would love to know a little bit about the history of Ronimo Games and just kind of the origins of your studio leading up to now.
So we're Ronimo Games. We're indie Dutch developer based in the Netherlands, in Utrecht, which is about half an hour, 20 minutes from Amsterdam. Originally, Ronimo was founded by the 7 founders who were all students at the Utrecht University of the Arts. So Ronimo was founded on 1st of March 2007. I think there's a dispute between when Ronimo was founded, because the official date and the founding date and the date that we signed for the company to be founded were apparently all different. So, but that's the standards of well, not standards, but that's something for the original owners to talk about. Ronimo stands for Robot Ninja Monkey. I still don't know if that's cool by 2007 standards or 2021 standards, but yeah, like I said, currently we have, I believe, 18 developers.
Mm-hmm.
We usually have 2 to 4 interns as well, but right now we currently don't have any interns. But during the peak of Blightbound, I believe we had around mid to late 20s number of devs. Yeah, right now 18, and
I think actually, if I may interrupt,
please go ahead, Lars.
If we include interns, mid Blightbound, we had more developers. I think we actually had close to around 30, including interns.
Yeah, which is a lot for Ronimo standards. I remember because as an indie, we're this is cheesy, and we're more like a family than a company.
Hmm.
Every lunchtime, we would actually have lunch together. But during the peak of Blightbound, like we had a huge table where we would sit 18 to 25 people. But during the peak of Blightbound, we actually had too many people in the studio, where we couldn't all sit together and have lunch together. So we kind of had to change that into like a roll in, roll out cafeteria style for lunch. But now, now because of the pandemic, we're all working from home. But after the pandemic, we're very much looking forward to having two people set the table for lunch, and then honking the very obnoxious lunch horn to signal to everyone, go and have lunch now together.
That is
Yeah,
the most charming thing to think about. The idea that an indie studio has a lunch bell and you guys ring it and then you all gather around a big old table. It sounds awesome.
hey, it's a giant table.
It
I'd say
really
it's
is
like
awesome. Yeah.
I'd say it's like probably 10-meter plus.
Yeah,
Probably, yeah, or
easily.
longer than
It's like a
easily.
giant.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a giant picnic table. Usually, also after hours, we sit around at the very same table, play D&D, board games, you name it. Also during lunch, like somebody puts up a Switch and we play, for instance, Mario Kart
yeah.
during the lunch
On
break.
Thursday evenings before the pandemic, we'd a few of us would stay around and have dinner together as well. And like Lauren says, then D&D or
Yeah,
board games afterwards.
See, that to me is the coolest part about game development stories, hearing about the little things that the team does outside of working time. And it's cool to know that it wasn't maybe I'm misreading, but that it wasn't all work all the time, that you guys were able to have fun and enjoy each other. Do you think that's a fair approximation of Ronimo?
Uh, I started at Ronimo in 2018, and during my as an intern. I think Lawrence also started as an intern, but and I'm not Dutch myself, but almost all my colleagues are, and we have a very strict divide between work and not work times.
Hmm.
So if it's past 6 o'clock, my colleagues would come up to me when I was an intern and tell me to stop working and then start doing other things and enjoy, quote unquote, enjoy myself. And I'd be like, oh, I just need to finish this one thing. They'd be like, no, no, close everything. It's no longer work time.
That's cool.
I
That's
feel
cool.
that bit is even harder nowadays with working from home. 'Cause I often find myself and others when you're already after working hours and still realize you're still working. um,
Is that imply? I think that's something a lot of people have found with work from home. It feels like you can never turn off the work time because your computer is always available to you. Have you guys been able to kind of battle through that, or do you still feel like you're kind of at the beck and call of work from home?
yeah, it's definitely tricky. Usually, I only have one computer, right? So I have this corner in my apartment where I
Hmm.
usually sit down, play some games. But now it's also my workstation. So I have some files laying around, and also like project related stuff on my computer. And even after hours, you still get uh, confronted with those things. And you usually think, okay, well, let me just finish this thing, or I would like to continue working on this. So you, in a way, keep getting reminded. What for me works is also, for instance, after work, just go for a walk for a little bit to kind of
Hmm.
replicate the commute you normally would have.
Hmm.
So like mentally, in a way, you kind of switch from work to really relaxation.
Certainly.
Um, yeah, there's definitely some tricks you can do.
Well, let's get to Blightbound itself overall. I have my thoughts on what type of game it is, but I think it'd be great for the listeners to hear you guys describe exactly what Blightbound is and provide, I suppose, the elevator pitch for the game.
Right. The elevator pitch for Blightbound would be it's a cooperative 2.5D dungeon crawler that's the one liner. But I think Lawrence can touch on this a bit more in a bit. But the initial idea of Blightbound was really that we wanted to replicate the MMO endgame dungeon crawling experience without you needing to sink 120 hours into
Yep.
leveling up your character to max level. Um, that's really what we wanted to replicate, create, and also improve upon. And with Blightbound.
Yeah, we here at Ronimo, the idea is that we usually make games that are accessible to a broad audience and easy to get into, and in a way, Awesome Notes is also a more accessible version than League of Legends. So the same with Swords and Soldiers, like it's a more accessible version of a standard RTS game like StarCraft, for instance. And for instance, with Blightbound, we wanted to make a more accessible kind of typical MMORPG game where you have dungeons and certain class trinity, like you have the typical tank, healer, damage dealer. And like Neil also said, we wanted to remove elements like just leveling until you get to the point where you can get to a dungeon and make it all a bit more bite-sized. So dungeons generally are much shorter than for instance dungeon in World of Warcraft would. So
was there?
That's the gist.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was done. I was done with it.
Well, what's the target time? I suppose if you're trying to capture that end game experience, what's the target time of a dungeon in Blightbound? Like, how long are you thinking players should take to go through a dungeon?
Yeah, the typical time was between 10 or 15 minutes, and then 15 minutes really being on the long end. There are some nuance to this. Some levels are a bit more linear than others, so we have more control over how long it would take. But there are some dungeons that also have like a very big boss battle at the end, with maybe even like a little cutscene type of scenario before it, and then that part alone generally takes up about 5 minutes, which means the dungeon before that can only basically the gameplay up until the boss could only last ideally up to 5 to 10 minutes. So that's generally the idea. We would like people just to hop in, be able to play a game, and then after 10 or 15 minutes play another game.
It was really, I thought, neat that you took the kind of standard classes of characters that you might have: tank, rogue, magic wielding, and such, and then kind of applied it to that smaller formula of racking through a dungeon in 10 to 15 minutes or so. What sort of balancing has to go into those different abilities to make sure that a player can progress quickly enough, I suppose, but still feel powerful?
Yeah, we actually tested a lot of things about this. Originally, we weren't even sure if we wanted to do the whole Trinity. Trinity being having a character that can only heal, having a character that can only soak up a lot of hits, and a character that can dish out a lot of damage. So we tried out a lot of different things. For instance, how does the gameplay feel like if you play with 3 healers, like 3 mages? How does it work if you play with 3 warriors? And well, in some cases it was kind of fun. We generally felt like it was more enjoyable if you had the whole Trinity role, because then you can go a bit more extreme to certain roles. Like for instance, the only way you can get healing in the game is either by picking up mana orbs or by the heal from the wizard. You also have items which allows you to go into life stealing, but generally, like the wizard heal is the only big heal in the game, which makes that role unique in the way that if people are low health, you're essentially a lifesaver. And same goes about the warrior being able to aggro everyone, so everyone attacks him and then negate hits, or the rogue being able to weaken enemies so they take more damage. Uh, and we kind of had a set amount of abilities that would synergize well with it for every class. And then we made some variations on those skills and see what kind of gameplay would be fun and would be interesting. And I think also during the early access development we had during Steam, we also adjusted some of those skills according to like playtest feedback.
Sure.
Yeah, that's kind of how we went about it.
And
Well, go ahead.
sorry,
Yeah.
just to add to Lawrence's point, my personal favorite part about Blightbound is how much customization you can have on your characters with items. So Lawrence touched on how the real the one big heal you can only get from the mage, but you can also, for example, as a warrior, you can equip lifesteal items that grant you lifesteal. So personally, I'm not that good at video games. So when I play as a warrior, I try to essentially become as small of a liability to my team as possible. So
Mm-hmm.
I would build my warrior with a lot of lifesteal, with a lot of defense buffs, where I could essentially just spend rage points, which is a resource I get from blocking damage, and turn that into lifesteal. So I wouldn't require as many heal resources from our mage uh, when I play as the warrior. And if I think Lawrence has done lots of really really cool builds. If you want to be, I think one of the builds he did for one of the warriors is literally a glass cannon build where you can essentially one shot elite enemies, but you
Mm-hmm.
you just fall over if there's a strong gust of wind.
On
all
actually the
all
opposite,
damage, no defense. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
basically. Also, on the contrary of that, you can also have a rogue, which can kind of forgo the damage roll and go fully into tanking mode. The only downside is that you cannot actually have aggro. Aggro being that enemies would attack you instead of the tank, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for instance, one of the characters, Triss, has a passive ability whenever you deal a damage over time effect, like a bleeding effect. You
Mm-hmm.
heal for a percentage of your maximum health. So, actually, during the launch of early access, that was one of the best characters because people would just play Triss and build a bunch of health items that would cause bleed effects. And then you also had different items that every time you would gain health by healing effects, you would gain maximum health,
Mm-hmm.
which resulted in pretty much infinite healing, pretty much infinite health. And yeah, it's kind of funny that you can build like all these different things, and even if a class is specific to a certain role, like oh hey, I can only deal damage, like I'm the rogue, you can still there's still nuance to that. Like there's still characters that kind of like try to break these rules
Mm-hmm.
and allow players for further customization.
One of the things that stood out to me immediately upon seeing the game, both when I played it and in watching videos, is this art style that seems to augment a lot of the different like building of characters. I feel like magic seems to stand out really well. Different types of attacks just glow throughout the world. Uh, Talk to me a little bit about the art for the game and just how you guys settled on the visual style for Blightbound.
So we always aim for our games to look like they are hand drawn, whether if it's Awesome North Swords and Soldiers series, and for Blightbound, a lot of it is also hand drawn. So we tend. So this is the process we our artists go through. So first we tend to do some concept art, and after that we try to paint and draw these characters straight into screenshots. So before we even have a level or a dungeon, we already have we've concepted how we want the final product to look like at a very early stage of development. And then this gets translated directly into parts which are used for animating the characters. So everything you see is drawn and painted, just comes to life basically, and all the characters and even effects are done this way. And we tend to aim for heavy inks combined with more painterly elements.
Mm-hmm.
And but that doesn't mean we don't use a wide array of techniques and tools at our disposal to create Blightbound. The main one for Blightbound is that we project all hand-drawn environment assets onto simplified 3D models to create
Mm-hmm.
more depth in our visuals. And also using 3D as a base allows us to use a whole range of shaders, um, normal maps, and other trickery to enhance the graphics further. Something you can't do easily when you go for hand drawn 2D. Our characters are still fully 2D, but
Mm-hmm.
they use a rigging system created with our in house engine, which we've used for all our titles so far. Um, so we can repurpose animations on all our various characters. This way, we don't have to animate every single character by hand, which would be almost impossible to do with such a wide roster of characters and enemies.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I can go into a bit more details. So to touch on the more detailed art style, I mentioned heavy inks with painterly elements earlier. So heavy inks are for the listeners who are where the lines and the shadows are pretty apparent and exaggerated, sometimes even blend into each other, and a more painterly style is where every stroke is kind of obvious and you have a lot of different shades and colors. We try to combine the two, so you have these heavy lines and black spots combined with more artsy fartsy painted bits. Differences, a clear difference you can see in its simplest form is like comparing something drawn by a pen or pencil versus something painted with a brush. So the inks or the heavy lines give it a quote unquote darker feel. Um, and to kind of go into how what was on the mood board for in the very early days when we created Blightbound, which for listeners who've played our other titles like Awesome Not, it's essentially it's really a kind of a polar opposite. So when it comes to inspiration behind the art style of Blightbound, uh, we you know on our mood board we had games like Darkest Dungeon, but also a lot of the inspiration comes from Mike Nola from Hellboy, combined with 80s 90s dark fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
or just fantasy in general, like Conan the Barbarian, He-Man, etc. We also looked quite a lot into Evil Dead's aesthetic to make it a bit more gruesome. We aimed for a bit of cheesiness combined with actual gruesome elements. So, for example, if you have like this blood-fueled skeleton boss, that could be in Power Rangers, but also Diablo as well.
Yeah. I also say I think I see that same thing with the dismemberment as well, which could be considered very gruesome, but I'm seeing like arms and stuff pop off, and it's almost comedic at times, and other times it's just like very intense. It's a good analogy of Diablo and Power Rangers.
Yeah, we have incredibly talented artists and animators in house, and all the props go to them for being able to really translate from concept to actual in-game gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I think a lot of the feedback
Also,
we get from all our games is that people really really dig the art. Sorry, Lawrence, go ahead.
I wanted to go a bit more into detail with the magic and fire, like popping against the background. It's also the artists use certain contrast in animations of skills. Like, for instance, the wizard heal is still within the. Well, let me rephrase this. We have certain colors for each class. So, for instance, the wizard is kind of a blue class color. So, and that means that the resources that the wizard collects are blue. The skin tone is, or like the clothing he has is blue. The all the skills that he uses are blue. So, for instance, when you see the wizard heal, it's a blue circle. One of the things that the artists have done is essentially up the contrast a lot, in combination with other techniques, like, for instance, putting a dark shadow underneath the skill itself, like the heal area. That way, the contrast between the skill and actually the shadow is always quite apparent wherever you are. And then for other players, because the skill is so contrasting compared to the background, it's easier to read and then also noticed during fights where, oh hey, this is like a very contrasting skill. This is a wizard heal. And then different skills, like for instance the wizard, like only spirit skill, is mostly a damaging skill, and that skill is not that important for other players. So one of the things we did is then, if you're not playing the wizard, so you have a wizard as a teammate, then the actual skill of the Unleash Spirits from the wizard is then less contrasting. So it actually plays different animation if you're not playing the wizard, because it's not really important for you to see the information that the wizard used to skill. Like, it's only important to know, like, oh hey, he used a damaging skill, and now the enemies would lose health, right? It's not, if you compare the damaging skill to with a healing skill, like the healing skill is like a team skill, so you would like to know when he uses it. The same goes, for instance, with the warrior. Like, the warrior has a battle call skill, which increases your auto attack damage and attack speed. That also is more contrasting in colors compared to the other warrior skills, just so it's easier to spot. And the same goes for the enemy skills. Like, they're really the quite damaging skills from enemies usually have like a very bright red color. Same goes for the writhing orb. It's like the riddle, not little, the quite red big ball, the kind of Pac-Man enemy that gets summoned by the writhing oracles. And it's actually, it deals a lot of damage if you get hit by it. So there was a lot of feedback during development that players didn't see the orb or see the orb being summoned. So, for instance, there's like this casting animation of the enemy that summons the orb, which takes about 5 seconds. During that animation, there's also runes that being cast, which are like bright red runes above the enemy, and you see the same runes somewhere underground, together with like a really flashy, almost white even, bright ball being summoned over time. And then at the end of the cast, then the orb is summoned, which is still, in contrast, a lot more visible than other elements in the background, as well as other damaging skills, because it is a higher priority skill. So that's also like one of the thoughts that go behind when the artist made the designs for these skills as well.
How much, Lawrence, working in the design element, how much communication did you need to go through with the art team in order to make sure that all of this came to fruition for the player?
Yeah, that's funny. I think a lot of the best things in the game are usually made when there's a lot of communication between disciplinaries. So when design talks with code and art together, usually the best ideas come to mind. I think initially for the arriving orb, like the red ball of doom. Initially, I made like a placeholder enemy, and for you folks at home, a placeholder means um, basically have something arbitrary in the game, just for the sake of it being later replaced by an actual entity. So in this case, I just had a big yellow ball, and yeah, it's we played with that big yellow ball very long during development, and was later when artists actually get around to filling the art when they actually come up with certain designs, and then usually they share these designs with the rest of the team. People can give feedback, and it's kind of up to them whatever they do with feedback. But in other times, when, for instance, designing a boss, design comes up with cool ideas for a boss, and then we like fiddle around and prototype cool mechanics and cool combination of enemy mechanics that work really well together and interesting challenges. And then usually the we rigorously playtest this, and it's always that, for instance, an artist or programmer is like, oh, it would be really cool if we have this effect to it, or if the boss does this. And sometimes like the ideas are so cool that we kind of make a mock-up or like a quick sketch of certain art things and implement that and see how it feels, or if the certain mechanic is displayed clearly enough, is it easy to understand and whatnot. Yeah, I think the have you actually went to the Riving, I believe it's called the Riving Oracle, like the tentacle lady with the that goes up in the air and casts spells on you? Have you fought that one?
Not yet. Not yet. No.
Ooh, okay. Sorry, it might have been a little spoiler, but
It's
I think
okay.
that is like a perfect example of when art and design works together, because there's like little cinematics in there as well, and even like the boss doesn't even well, essentially the boss has moments where she goes up in the air and you have to attack different targets, and these targets are also highlighted, also combined with sound even. So there's a lot of communication involved, and also a lot of playtesting. And yeah, it's just if people have great ideas and everybody's excited about it, we just try these ideas out, and then
Brilliant.
yeah, just adds up.
Brilliant. That's awesome. That's just, I love hearing about the blend and the synergy, as the corporate people might suggest, between the two. Um, I think you guys have already answered this, but several listeners did write in asking about inspirations for Blightbound. One of them equating it to Dragon's Crown, which I can see the you
Oh
know
yeah.
tangentially relation, but you also mentioned things like Evil Dead and Diablo at various points. What inspirations do you guys think the team took from other forms of media?
Uh, so I think it's important to mention that we didn't just look at other games, but also comics, cartoons, live action series, movies, and even music videos. There's a lot of stuff that that inspired us. That's not just in games. Like I mentioned earlier, 80s, 90s fantasy, Conan the Barbarian, He-Man, Frazetta, Xena, and also Mike Mignola from Hellboy. And but also when it comes to games, we looked a lot at Streets of Rage, for example. But also Street Fighter Three's art style was a big inspiration. Um,
Oh, I can see that.
like
I
the
can see
character,
that.
right? Yeah, because the characters have such a huge depth of color and a nice simplicity to it. We tried to aim for something similar, and also Brutal Legend was also a big inspiration, and of course Doom Eternal for sure had an impact. And also just to also link this with what Lawrence mentioned earlier with, for example, Street Fighter 3's art style, with where the characters have such huge depth of color. We and linking it to what Lawrence was mentioning earlier about the class specific colors, because we thought, readability is very, very important, like getting the color palettes right for each group of characters and their skills: blue for wizards, green for rogues, orange for barbarians, as well as the enemies using mostly gray or white color combined with blue, red, purple, which tend to range between their ranks. So bosses would have more red colors, while minions would just be blue and purple. And coming back to how this needs to be very, very clear. Otherwise, the game could just look like a big mess. And this was something we thought was really important when in the early days of development. And that's why, for example, Street Fighter 3's art style was a pretty big inspiration. Uh, especially when it comes to the depth of color and as well as the simplicity to it.
Also, not even like actual in-game dungeon type of gameplay, but also like the meta gameplay inside the refuge. Also took a lot of inspiration from Darkest Dungeon and Gloomhaven. For instance, with Gloomhaven, the whole prosperity system, where Gloomhaven is a board game essentially, where you kind of do almost D&D style sessions, where you get loot and eventually you level up the town you're in. And then you unlock things like a blacksmith, and you're able to get new items or smith stronger weapons. That's almost in a literal sense also what we have, as well as the with Darkest Dungeon, not only the art style, but we also have a refuge. Initially, heroes would perish by the blight if they got blight struck hard enough. Like there was this perma-death mechanic for your characters, where if you die too much in a dungeon or in a period of time, then characters would go insane or just totally messed up, and then would wander off with all your loot, uh, which was quite punishing. But there were mechanics in the refuge, for instance, where you could have a sort of hospital or some other. I can't even recall what the places were, but essentially the characters would lose blight, so you had to treat them inside the hospital, for instance, gather resources for other fallen heroes as well. And so the metagame actually played a bigger role. And then we actually also tried to combine the metagame with more in-game things, where, for instance, in-game you might find a hero that was perished because he was too blight-struck or had too much blight. So maybe he now is an enemy and is fighting against you with the items he previously had. Or maybe you can actually rescue him and he joins your band of heroes again. We looked at a lot of different games and tried to take a lot of fun inspirations from them. But as I said, for instance, with the what we really liked, for instance, was Darkest Dungeon and the whole like roguelike mechanics of the game. It was very apparent very quickly that a lot of players didn't like that, because it's also an RPG game where you level up your heroes, you craft gear for them, you really become attached to certain characters. If they then suddenly wander off because you died too much, then it feels super punishing and not fun. So
Right.
not every idea is a good idea, but
But all important to the process, I would think.
Yeah, exactly. And it's good to know what your strengths and weaknesses are in that regard, that you kind of build on the fun. So yeah, a lot of, like I said, a lot of games like Streets of Rage, also Double Dragon comes to mind, Dragon's Crown, Darkest Dungeon for sure.
Well, in my final question for you guys today, it's an unfair one. It's not fair. Are you happy with it? Are you happy, proud, pleased? Is there more you want to do with it? How do you feel now that the game is out?
Um, I'll go first with this, and just like to kind of paint a bit of a more macro picture with basically working culture in the Netherlands. We're very very direct. Uh, Not just the studio, but also just the general culture in the Netherlands. It's Dutch directness, and I personally, I'm pretty critical about what we've done with Blightbound. Proud, of course, but also very
Mhm.
critical. Um, it's definitely been a learning experience, and like you and Lawrence just touched on, we had lots of great ideas, but at the end of the day, we didn't really keep um, the studio size and our capabilities in mind, because we have an incredible amount of good ideas and we try to do as many of the ideas as possible, but we
Mhm.
don't really have the scope uh, or the size to maybe do all of the ideas. Maybe we can only do 25% of the ideas we really really
Mm-hmm.
like.
Mhm.
So that's something, I think that's a, scope management is something we have learned with Blightbound, because good ideas are great and we all have good ideas. We have good ideas. The community has good ideas, but we can't just keep piling things on the to do list, and eventually it gets a bit overwhelming.
Mhm.
I personally think Blightbound is a great game, but the with how the game, with the state the game launched, there were lots of bugs that slipped through QA,
Mhm.
which I know as a studio we're not happy about, and we're working incredibly hard to rectify that. For example, we plan to have a patch out on all platforms before the end of this week. For listeners, this week is 2nd of August, so before the end of this week. Hopefully, by the time you're listening, the game is at a much better state, a much more
Mhm.
stable, and you're having a lot of fun with it. Um, so today we had a pretty our producer had a very long talk with our coders to really prioritize the most important issues to solve, and what we're going to include in the patch before the end of the week, that we want to push live before the end of the week. Um, but I mean, I'm rambling a bit, but in general, I think I'm really happy with Blightbound, with what kind of game it is, but as well as a more holistic view of the kind of learning experience it's offered to the studio, and
Mhm.
what takeaways we can have um, from the project as a whole. I I love the game. I It's definitely a game that I personally dig. Um, yeah, I'll let Lawrence have his say.
Mm-hmm.
What you got,
Right.
Lawrence?
Hey, yeah, so this is my first project that I actually worked on since
Wow,
graduating.
congratulations.
Thanks, thanks.
That's
I've been.
awesome.
I actually realized now that we haven't introduced ourselves. I don't think. But
We
hey,
can
I'm
put it in
Lawrence.
the podcast description.
Sure, sure. So I've been a designer at Ronimo Games for about 2.5 years now. My very first project ever now is actually working on Blightbound. Um, I've mainly worked on the hero skills and the um actually on pretty much all enemies as well as bosses. Um, I think the bosses specifically is something I'm really proud of, and just like Neil said, for instance, scope is a huge thing. Like it's being mentioned also at several places that, for instance, it would be nice that if characters were more diverse. So, for instance, we have 7 heroes per class, and some heroes reuse skills, but we try to still make them different by the way how they're base stats are, as well as the life goals, as well as the passive. Usually, the passive is actually like character build defining, and not so much the skills. And then later on, we during early access, we also had like other like in development kind of skills, but we didn't have enough resources to make them like fully functional skills. So, for instance, we put a bunch of them on just weapons, which you can acquire later on. So you can actually customize some skills of your character, um, or even just swap out completely with different skills later on in the game. Um, and yeah, I think in general, the launch with like some of the crashes and the bugs could have been better. Like Neil said, we are working on them. There's also a new patch coming with, I believe that also includes the final dungeon, right, Neil? Or
We have I believe several patches or fixes upcoming.
right?
First one to hit at the end of this week, so 7th of August. Uh, and after the patches and fixes, we have at least one more big update planned, which is
Yeah.
update 1.1 with with new content coming,
Yes.
and with the overall planning for Blightbound, where we're kind of keeping on we're on our toes. Once we release update 1.1 with new content, then we'll kind of take a step back and evaluate, if we want to, you know, well, the preface for this is, first of all, are we happy with the state of the game?
Mm-hmm.
If we're happy with the state of the game, then we'll evaluate and think, do we want to continue working on Blightbound, and or decide what the future of the project is, and also the future of the studio as a whole. But update 1.1 should hit, uh, I would say, later this year, September, October, this year. Maybe,
Later on,
maybe,
yeah, no need
maybe
to
a
put
bit
a date.
later.
No
No,
need for a
no,
date. No
no,
need
no
for a
date,
date.
no date yet.
Yeah,
TBC.
yeah. TV's no need for extra pressure of any kind there. Well, let me ask you this, guys, as we close out. Where should players go if they want to check out Blightbound? What platforms is it available on? And of course, feel free to plug your socials.
Blightbound is available on PC, PS4, and Xbox One, or PlayStation and Xbox consoles, current and next. Well, I guess current gen. I guess.
Current gen, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
with crossplay enabled between all three platforms. We really value we really value brand building and community building, and also giving back to the community. So we have dev streams live twice a week on twitch.tv/Ronimo Games at 7 p.m. Central European time, 10 a.m. Pacific time, or I believe 1 p.m. Eastern, um, every Monday and Thursday. Uh, we're at Ronimo Games on Twitter, Ronimo Games on Facebook, and Ronimo Games Official on Instagram. If you'd like to see some really cool behind the scene art, some some concept art we had that never made it into our games, or some skin concepts we've cooked up for our games in the past that also never made it into the live game.
Mm-hmm.
And every now and then we do some indie dev shenanigans thrown in
Also,
there.
please check out the Discord. We have a Discord server for Animo Games. And also
Yeah,
for
if
Blightbound, it's a lot of fun, in my opinion, to play with friends or with randos. But in the Ronimo Discord, there's also a channel for Blightbound to find new friends to play with, new people. And yeah, it's being actively used. It's a great way, especially also cross-platform, to communicate with others. So definitely check that out.
and that's discord.gg/Ronimo.
Yeah.
Lawrence and Neo of Ronimo Games, thank you guys for joining me today.
Thank you very much
Yeah,
for having us on.
Thank you much for having me.
Thank you.